Dear colleagues, we have the Prime Minister of Bulgaria, Nikolay Denkov, with us today. Prime Minister, welcome to the European Parliament. Thank you for being here. Special welcome also, I see her now walking in, to Maria Gabriel, the Deputy Prime Minister, whom we know so well in this House. Prime Minister, this is the first time you are here since we have seen the conclusion of the critical governmental rotation agreement in Bulgaria that finally managed to break through the political deadlock and gave Bulgaria an important perspective, stability and European outlook, and for that we are grateful. 16 years of European Union membership have been transformative for Bulgaria and for Europe. It has given new impetus for businesses, for industry, for science, for technology. It has brought opportunities for people and for young people in particular. It has brought more social and judicial benefits and reforms, because EU membership promotes equality, social justice, democracy and the rule of law. And in times of geopolitical change, these European values must be defended. Dear Prime Minister, I would like to particularly thank Bulgaria for its support for Ukraine, for providing military aid, for providing political support. Europe is stronger thanks to Bulgaria and your government, and will be stronger still when you join the Eurozone and finally take your rightful place in the Schengen area. Next June, 6.8 million Bulgarians will be called upon to choose the 17 elected members of the European Parliament who will represent them here. We must work together to make sure people understand why they must vote, why it is important. Their voice matters for the European Union and Bulgaria's future, and we must keep listening and keep delivering. Prime Minister, the floor is yours.
Madam President of the European Parliament, presidents of parliamentary political groups, representative of the Council, Madam Commissioner, ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor and privilege for me to be here among you, representatives of United Europe, in this beautiful city. Just days after the end of the Second World War, the French army entered Strasbourg, and tomorrow also we will be celebrating the anniversary of from the day when Strasbourg was liberated from Nazi occupation. Strasbourg is a city with a tumultuous and rich history. It was part of the Roman Empire, then it was part of the Holy Roman Empire, it was briefly an independent city, and over the past 2 centuries it was either French or a German city. Strasbourg is known as a city of roads, and in the past these roads saw more soldiers and tanks than traders and peaceful citizens. In the past, to be at the crossroads was rather a curse, not a blessing. In the past, these roads separated people. Today, they unite people. In the past, the sky over Strasbourg was wounded by fighter jets, by bombs, and now we see commercial airplanes, also kites and children's balloon. Today, Strasbourg symbolizes peace. In the past, Julius Caesar, Charlemagne, Napoleon, Hitler and Stalin tried to unite Europe through conquest, through wars, through the force of weapons. And the more cruel these wars were, the shorter the time of their success stories was. Today, Europe is united in peace, being a union of equal partners, and the values of democracy, rule of law, human rights are upheld, as well as human dignity and rights of each and every citizen. You work in Strasbourg. You are the Parliament of the United Europe. You are the guarantor of upholding European values. My country is one of the most ancient countries in Europe. Since 681, we have been called Bulgaria. In its history, Bulgaria was part of the Byzantine Empire, and it was part of the Ottoman Empire, almost 5 centuries. But our country was able to resurrect thanks to those who initiated and carried out the Bulgarian national revival in the 19th century. One of them is our national hero, Vasil Levski. He is the person who inspired the European spirit of Bulgaria. He said that Bulgaria should be a democratic republic where all ethnic groups, Bulgarians, Turks, Jews, everyone, would be equal in all meanings, in all areas of life, and everyone would live according to the law upon which everyone has agreed. And our well-being, he said, depends on our united, concerted efforts. I think that it is hardly to add something to this. In its modern history, Bulgaria was subject to attempts to be dominated. Some of them were successful. I mean here, Russia and the Soviet Union. Unfortunately, these imperial ambitions of Russia continue up to today. Our country is a target of hybrid attacks. Putin's Russia tries to use our economic ties between Bulgaria and Russia, and also the traditional cultural links between the Bulgarian and the Russian peoples. That's why the fully fledged membership of Bulgaria in the European Union and NATO is the guarantee of the European way and development of our country. That's why we need to finalize our accession to the Euro area and the Schengen area. I would like here to thank all MEPs who supported Bulgaria in its ambition to join Schengen. This is a cause which means European justice, European fairness. Bulgaria has always been part and parcel, not only of military achievements of Europe. I would like to remind you that Bulgaria was the state that stopped the Arab invasion to Europe, and also we were part of the European Enlightenment. Part of this is the Cyrillic alphabet, which was created by 2 Bulgarians. Our ambition as Bulgaria of today to give its meaningful contribution to the development and growth of the European Union. We understand that the new member countries, especially the poor ones, the European Union is usually perceived by a place from which funds come and where people can find better paid jobs. But we need to break this stereotype. That's why I would like to remind us all of the words of J.F. Kennedy. Don't ask what the European Union could do for your country. Ask what your country, what you could do for the European Union. Ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately, the European Union is not an isolated island of well-being and peace. We have a devastating war on our doorstep. We see how Putin's Russia wants to crush the Ukrainian people's will to live independently in peace. The conflict in the Middle East, caused by the brutal atrocities of Hamas against the peaceful Israeli citizens, and then we saw also the reaction of Israel, which also led to loss of human lives, including those of women and children. We need to take into account also the unstable situation in Lebanon, Jordan and Iraq, and also we mustn't forget about the situation in Afghanistan, where Taliban is in power. Also, Iran is threatening the international community with its nuclear program. There is a huge risk also stemming from the heightening tensions between China and Taiwan. We also can see that also in Africa, Gabon, Chad, Guinea, Mali, Burkina Faso, saw coup d'etat committed by the military. It is worrying that some of these coup d'etat were performed by the crucial role of the private military company Wagner. And also we can see that civil war continues in Libya, Ethiopia, Somalia. We saw also numerous murderous terrorist attacks in many other African countries. This all signals that our world is very unstable. We cannot neglect all these geopolitical challenges. To face them, to address them, Europe needs to be strong, and for this, it needs to be united. There are two main political ideologies in Europe, conservatism and liberalism, and they should strive for mutual understanding and cooperation. The borders of our countries, the history and traditions of our nations, Christianity and family are conservative values which are still needed in our world today. The borders of Europe that have become so visible now because of the migrant crisis and the war of Ukraine emphasize even more these conservative values. But the world is becoming more and more global, and the liberal ideas also are taking root in international cooperation, politics, culture. The rights of women, minorities, people who are different from majorities are part of liberal democracy. We need to turn our back on the extremes, and we need to be united around the most important values, conservative and liberal ones. We need to fight the polarization as a political platform to come to power. Only thus will we be able to regain the confidence of our citizens. A united and strong Europe should be more active on the international arena, being a reliable guarantor of peace. At the same time, the European Union needs to foster its cooperation with strategic partners, including first and foremost partners from NATO, and needs to consider the need for a single European army. Ladies and gentlemen, given the complex international situation, the enlargement of the European Union becomes even more relevant and important. Bulgaria has always been strongly in favor for the accession of Western Balkan countries to the European Union. At the same time, we believe that these states should become EU member states only when they meet all criteria. Their accession should be based on the merit, on their sincere will to become real members of the European family. We welcome the decision of the European Commission to launch the negotiations for accession with Ukraine and Moldova. We hope that Georgia will join this group soon. The European Union does need fostering and strengthening of its institution and also enlargement. But we believe that the accession of new countries should go hand in hand with the enhancement of EU institutions. The reports on rule of law are a very good guarantee for control. And also this is important for candidate countries. All waves of enlargement of the European Union have shown that the larger the EU becomes, the more powerful and strong it is. Today in Europe, we can see a certain fatigue from the war in Ukraine, and we can see the diminishing of aid to Ukraine and Ukrainian refugees. More and more Europeans are asking the questions, why should we support a nation at war and a nation which is not an EU member state? Isn't it better to ensure peace? And many people say that even bad, unstable peace is better than the best war. And we remember what Winston Churchill said with regard to the Munich Accords of 1938. Those who do not remember the past are condemned, are doomed to repeating it. We remember how all attempts finished when there were attempts to appease Hitler. Actually, Putin's war against Ukraine is a war against Europe. When we protect Ukraine, we defend and protect Europe. Otherwise, tomorrow, Moldova could become a new Ukraine. The other day, the Baltic states, Poland, Romania, Bulgaria, and other European countries. Esteemed MEPs, a consequence of wars and instability is also the rise in migration. Due to Europe being such an attractive place, the vast majority of people seeking refuge go to Europe, but the European Union is not capable of welcoming an unlimited number of migrants without this threatening its institutions.
Moreover, the integration of those already in Europe is quite a slow process. There are incidents committed by radicalized elements, many of them born and bred within the European Union. We need a new strategy that will make a clear distinction between war refugees and economic migrants. The European Union has to make all efforts to integrate refugees and to discourage and stop illegal and economic migration. We need to strike the proper balance between security and the opportunities that are given to them. Hopefully, all these challenges will be reflected in the new migration and asylum package. Bulgaria has met all the criteria for accession to the Schengen area. Any further delays of our accession are unacceptable, and they cannot be understood by the Bulgarian general public. Many countries reintroduce their border controls, but they cannot be arguments for the failure to accept Bulgaria into the Schengen area. With Bulgaria within Schengen, European borders will be better protected and Europe will be stronger. Ladies and gentlemen, finally, I would like to remind you of a story of solidarity. On the 5th of March 2022, Just a few days after the Russian aggression in Ukraine, the official website of the Slovak police published the following notice. An 11-year-old boy from the Zaporozhye crossed the border on foot with the passport hanging from his neck, the telephone number, and a small nylon bag in his hand. He came alone because his mother had to remain in Ukraine. My name's Hassan, said the boy, and I'm alone. I had to come to Slovakia alone. His mother saw him off at the railway station. And he went on with his story. We have a long experience with moving and crossing borders. We were ousted from our homes by the Russians in Syria. And the only thing Hassan could rely on was the telephone number of his elder brother. The mother said, I could not accompany my son because I'm crippled. Yulia Vladimirovna was the name of the mother. That is a hero. The child walked over 1,000 kilometers. Some of that distance was covered on trains, but threat of bombing was his sole companion. But there were no tears in the eyes of this young hero. He even tried to smile. This is the human tragedy behind the dry statistics cited in the media. Ladies and gentlemen, I started my speech with the symbols of the past and the future. Allow me to mention a few more memorable events. Today, we celebrate the anniversary of the first president of the Fifth Republic, General Charles de Gaulle. On the 23rd of November, 1959, President de Gaulle delivered his famous speech from the Atlantic to the Ural, expressing his vision that Europe will be a single whole throughout this vast territory. The Cold War was at its peak, from Szczecin, the Baltic Sea, to the Mediterranean, Trieste. That sounded absurd. It might sound absurd today when Ukrainian men, women, and children die. It could equally be absurd. But when Lukashenko, Putin, and all the others will be bygone, when there are no young heroes with just a passport hanging from their neck and a telephone number written on their palm, we will have free, democratic, and united Europe. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will now start with the speakers of the different political groups, starting with the EPP group. I give the floor for 2.5 minutes to Andrej Kovačev.
Благодаря ви, госпожо председател.
Thank you, Madam President, Madam Commissioner, dear colleagues. I would like to welcome Mr. Denkov, Ms. Gabriel. I'm very happy that you are here among us. Bulgaria has a pro-European, predictable, stable government whose prime minister you are, And this is thanks to the wise policy carried out by the Citizens for European Development of Bulgaria party and its chairperson, Mr. Borisov. It is very important that every EU member state should have a pro-European, stable, predictable government. Unfortunately, the elections and the delay in forming the government led to the delays to receive EU funds, which was felt by all Bulgarian citizens. And also, I am very happy that you haven't lost Sofia, the capital, in the recent local elections. We will, as a party, continue being a guarantor of stable pro-European development of Bulgaria. We also will do everything to eliminate all remains of our communist past, and also we will fight the influence of some Russian oligarchs, and especially Lukoil, which is so important for the Kremlin's budget. I would like to thank Ms. Gabriel for her efforts so that Bulgaria can join the Schengen area. I would like to thank Ms. Gabriel for her excellent speech and also for her efforts leading to Bulgaria becoming a member of the UN Human Rights Council. I think that it is very good that pro-democratic political forces in Bulgaria have managed to set up a government, and I hope that cooperating with you, Mr. Denkov, we will continue going successfully towards the establishment of Bulgaria as a fully fledged member of the EU, which will contribute to the political security of Bulgaria and of the EU.
Vitanov, 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam President. Mr. Prime Minister, you're welcome to the European Parliament. Today, there will be some indicative vote on possible amendments to the EU treaties, including the decisions related to the enlargement. So I would like to ask you about the position of the Bulgarian government on the rule of the qualified majority vote or a unanimous vote on matters of enlargement. You mentioned Moldova and Ukraine. Will the negotiations with them affect the position of the countries in the Western Balkans? This should not be a disincentive for them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vitanov. And now, on behalf of the Renew Europe Group, Mr. Stéphane Séjourné for 2 minutes. Oui, bien sûr, aujourd'hui.
Madame la Présidente.
Madam President, Prime Minister, and dear colleagues, thank you, Prime Minister, for your highly pro-European speech. Your government has been a breath of fresh air for Bulgaria, and particularly for the European aspects thereof. That's what I want to talk about today. As I say, your government is pro-European. It's a progressive one. It's a very welcome breath of fresh air. And when it comes to a specific support for Ukraine in the face of the Russian attacker, this is also welcome, your position. And so my political family supports your stance. And I'd like to take this opportunity also to state how responsible your party has shown itself to be, having set up a coalition despite the differences, obtaining this in the interest of your country and especially of Europe. In these institutions, people have often felt very fatalistic about certain of Bulgaria's difficulties when it comes to combating corruption or combating climate change or our continent's unity on the international front. But it has to be said that the reform of your government by your predecessors, after your predecessors and with you, a lot of criticisms have been tempered now, and we're working together really with an eye on a green and innovative future for Europe, and one where there's solidarity with Ukraine, sovereignty. And in this Europe of tomorrow, Bulgaria has a key place when it comes to our perspective of enlargement to the Balkans. As you know, some of us are very much in favour of that, and it's high time that Bulgaria, with its Romanian neighbour, be allowed into the Schengen area. We should not frustrate the hopes of the Bulgarians in that regard. And I launch a call to my colleagues in the EPP. Turning to my colleague, you know that we in Renew have done our part. We have tried to assist our allies in the decision to allow Bulgaria into the Schengen area. We need the PP to win over their allies as well. There are those who are still opposing the idea. So, Prime Minister, you will always have a friend and an ally and somebody supporting you in your efforts in Renew Europe. Thank you.
To take the floor for 3 minutes. Can I please ask you to keep to the time? Difficult day ahead.
Mr. Prime Minister, we were born actually, Mr. Prime Minister, I know that Maria Gabriel has more attractiveness to you than me, but because she's your partner in government. We were born actually 6 months apart, and when we were born, we were separated, you and I, by an iron curtain. And it remains to me a deep joy to see that our two countries are now part of the same union, and it's a union, as you said, of choice, of freedom, and based on rule of law. And like you, and maybe you didn't say it explicitly, but I really resent when some European politicians are comparing the European Union to the new Soviet Union or to a renewed Third Reich, where we would be submitted by force. We all chose freely to be part of that union, and that remains a source of pride. And let no one believe that the European Union is a repetition of the past failures in Europe. The second thing I want to say is that I totally agree with you when you say that what is happening in Ukraine is basically the defense of the values on which the European Union has been built. This is our struggle. And I must say that, yes, it entails effort from the members of the European Union to help Ukraine, but frankly speaking, they are putting their lives on the line. We are just putting part of our wealth to help them, and I think that's the least we can do. Third thing where I agree with you is that, yes, the European Union is a union freely chosen, but it has to be merit-based. And there, again, when the merits are there, the decision should follow. Yes, Bulgaria and Romania must be part of Schengen. And for citizens, this is probably, with the common currency, the most emblematic meaning of what it means to be part of the European Union, so full support for that. I will finish with the values. You mentioned a lot the conservative and liberal values, and then the green in me said, hang on 1 second, yes, the conservatives and the liberals have brought a lot to Europe, but I think that there's more to European political diversity and values diversity than just those two families. I think that the left has brought this value of social justice, and that lies at the heart of the European Union. And I would finish with the thing that was most absent from your speech. Well, you know, if you and I and our kids and grandkids will live in the 21st century and beyond, well, it will be because we have been able to protect this planet as our common home. And indeed, that lies as well at the heart of the values of the European Union, making sure that indeed the planet on which we live will be welcoming us for generations to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lambert. And now Andrej Jambaski for 4 minutes.
Thank you, Madam President. Colleagues, Mr. Prime Minister, you started with some references to history, but they were rather partial. Let's not forget that on this date, many years ago, but not so many, the western parts of Bulgaria were occupied, and there were atrocities against Bulgarian people, Bulgarians, and thanks to Churchill's intervention, an end was put on it. You cited J.F. Kennedy, but you need to ask the question, what does the Bulgarian government do to Bulgarian citizens? Because it's not the EU bureaucrats, but the Bulgarian citizens who employ you, and you should serve them. You said that now in the skies of Strasbourg we could see children's kites, white doves, and so on. But what Bulgarians see, they see inflation, high prices, they are struggling to make ends meet. And you, as Prime Minister, should not allow that the Bulgarian citizens suffer from high prices, from inflation. This is not European. This is hypocrisy. This is a double standard. You are not a director of a tourist agency. You are a prime minister of a member state of the EU. You also referred to Ukraine. Yes, it is necessary to support Ukraine, but also we need to support not only Bulgarian citizens in Bulgaria, but also we need to support ethnic Bulgarians in North Macedonia. And there are people who turn a blind eye to the violence against Bulgarians in North Macedonia. And this is a problem, but you should say to North Macedonian government, you should stop violence against ethnic Bulgarians. These are European values. And you should say to Bulgarian diplomats to do this. And also in the Court of Human Rights in Strasbourg, we also need to protect Bulgarians. And when Kosovo saw also searches and also violence of Serbs against Serbs in Kosovo, you did nothing. You said that you will investigate what has been happening with state subsidies. You should do this. It is necessary to check where subsidies are going, who is the beneficiary. About transport companies, you also spoke about Africa, Mali, Chad, and so on, but you are Bulgarian Prime Minister, and you need to focus on the interests and well-being of Bulgarian citizens and their access to freedom of movement, their access to European prospects. So I wish you to be in good health, but politically speaking, you will need to have a very strong backbone, and you need to be absolutely adamant defending Bulgarian interest, in the interests of all Bulgarians. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker on behalf of the Identity and Democracy Group, Mr. Beck, please.
Thank you, President. Honourable Prime Minister, allow me to congratulate you on your decision to order an investigation into the 2023 Bulgarian-Turkish gas deal concluded by your predecessor. The southern gas corridor, we all know, is used to launder Russian gas via Turkey and to circumvent EU sanctions, which so far have very little effect on the Russian economy. Forgive me, sorry. The European Commission knows this full well, as its €400 million subsidy agreement with the gas corridor contains a secrecy clause which prohibits any probe into the provenance of the gas. In other words, former Prime Minister Borisov was given a free license to launder Russian gas in return for his loyal support for Mrs. Merkel and her party throughout his years in the Council. Moreover, under the gas deal, Bulgargas has to pay Turkey's state-owned gas company Botas an annual service fee of €2 billion. Northern European citizens are paying cohesion funds to Bulgaria, which Bulgaria then appears to be handing over to Erdogan. EU policy, it seems, is riddled with hypocrisy. On Bulgarian accession to Schengen, I agree with the position taken by the Austrian and Dutch governments. We need to reform Schengen before we can talk about Schengen expansion. There's also the regrettable issue of Bulgarian officials selling Schengen visas to illegal migrants. Of course, the main culprit here is Germany, which is creating pull factors for migrants to enter via southern Europe and resisting credible rules for pushbacks and comprehensive repatriation of illegal migrants. We therefore call on the Bulgarian government to help us in the fight for ambitious migration reform in the EU. Then I can't imagine your application finally to join the Schengen system would pose too many problems. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker on behalf of the Left Group, Mr. Willumsen. The floor is yours.
President, Commissioner and Prime Minister, this is Europe, a Europe where we stood united in solidarity with Ukraine after the brutal attack by Putin, a Europe that has imposed sanctions against Putin for his grave violations against international law and human rights, a Europe that actively has engaged in making sure that war crimes in Ukraine will be prosecuted. Dear colleagues, this is a Europe I'm proud of. But when we look at the horrors unfolding in Gaza and the response of the European Union, we have clearly failed. We stood united in condemning the brutal terror attack of Hamas. Good. We have stood united in a call for immediately releasing of all hostages. Good. But we have failed in protecting the innocent children and people of Gaza. They have died by the thousands. Those alive are struggling to survive. If they live, they will be traumatized. This is Europe. And this Europe has for years failed to speak up against the Israeli violations of international law, failed to speak out against the human rights violations that Palestinians in the occupied territories daily suffer, failed to pressure for a sustainable two-state solution where both Israelis and Palestinians can live in peace and prosperity side by side. Dear colleagues, dear Prime Minister, Europe can do better. Let this Europe be a Europe of strong values, a Europe that speaks out for international laws in all matter, a Europe that speaks out against killing of civilians, whoever they are, a Europe that speaks out for peace and prosperity for both the people of Israel and Palestine.
Thank you. Next speaker, Mrs. Ždanoka. The floor is yours, please.
Honorable Prime Minister Denkov and Mrs. Gabriel. Yes, I want to start with also acknowledging what Philippe told, that I was a little bit surprised when you spoke about conservatism and liberal values, not mentioning social values, while President Metsola spoke about. But nevertheless, I have to remind that Bulgarian presidency, when it took place in the beginning of 2018, supported our proposed guidelines for employment policies in the member states. I was a reporter at that time. And thanks to that, directive on minimum wage appeared. But our proposal was more ambitious. And what do you think about proposal of minimum income for EU? And I have to remind that Bulgaria is the state was in the bottom of list of minimum wage, smaller minimum wages as my country as well. Yeah. Another question is about rights and about rights of minorities. You spoke about Vasil Levski mentioning Bulgarians, Jews, and Turks as equal. But what happens now? What do you think about the rights of minorities, especially the rights to participate in election campaign in their own language? We know the decision of the European Court where Bulgaria lost. And the same problem exists in my country, Latvia as well. Abolishing education, abolishing rights to speak in pre-election campaign in minority languages. It is not the Europe you mentioned as a Europe uniting. United in diversity means not only unity of 27 member states, but also of all languages, of all cultures within European Union. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, colleague, Mr. Rangel. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. Dear Prime Minister, dear Commissioner Ivanova, I would like to say that Bulgaria is a country whose history is intertwined with Europe, and it is really in the origin of the DNA of Europe from its ancient times to modern times. Your country gave us the alphabet of Saint Cyril and Methodius, and you are speaking in a very clear way the language of freedom after 1990. So it's a pleasure to have, it's really something that completes the European project to have Bulgaria in the European Union and also in NATO. And I also have to congratulate you and Maria Gabriel for the return of political stability and responsible behavior. A clear pro-European government. And I would like to say that here, Maria Gabriel, that is a very, very committed pro-European, is a very important active of your executive. Then let me tell you that I understand the difficulties in external landscape of a country that has its coast in the Black Sea, so close to the war. But at the same time, it's very important to call on you to step up your efforts to end fossil fuel dependence on Russia. Could you clarify how you plan to close this loophole on Russia oil? We are here as the European Union to support you, but we need also your efforts in this field. And let me tell you that we are also a bit worried with the European funds, because the instability of the last years paralyzed the development and the implementation of these European funds. So what is the plan for the next 2 years where you have a very, very, very tiny time? And only to say, we are totally with Bulgaria and with Romania on your Schengen accession. And we, as EPP, we already condemn the EPP government that is blocking that. I hope that liberals with Netherlands would do the same, especially after these elections.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, colleague Mr. Negrescu, please.
Dear Prime Minister, dear Deputy Prime Minister, Romania and Bulgaria deserve to be accepted to the Schengen area, and this needs to happen fully, and it needs to happen now. It is unacceptable for our two countries to be left out, even though we fulfill all the Schengen criteria, and we have efficiently protected the European borders for so many years. We live, dear Prime Minister, in a difficult region, but we have always defended European values and the cohesion of our Union. We did that during difficult times in the Western Balkans. We helped build the safe Black Sea region while maintaining a good relationship with Turkey, Georgia, and the countries in the Black Sea. And we are proving it once more today with the support provided to Ukraine and the Republic of Moldova. Romania and Bulgaria are not second-rank members, and people should stop looking at us this way. That is why I call upon the EU leaders to support our accession to Schengen all the way, by having a vote by the end of the year in order to show that respecting the rules in the EU pays off. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, colleague, Mr. Kuchuk. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President, Mr. Prime Minister, dear colleagues. I have participated many times in such debates, and they have always ended in the same conclusion, the bet on the internal policy of Bulgaria. Let's do this differently now. Let's not make it about the domestic policy of Bulgaria, but to be about the future of Europe. And let's use this pro-European majority to conduct the reforms that are so necessary. There is one issue on which there is a consensus. The European Commission, European members of the European Parliament, they agree on the issue of Schengen. If we don't join Schengen, we're risking a lot as members of the European Union. We risk undermining the foundations of everything that we have achieved over the past 70 years, because the Bulgarian and Romanian citizens cannot continue to be treated as they have been treated in the past years. They're not different from the Austrian, Dutch and other citizens. The Bulgarian economy is suffering a lot. If we want to have a union based on a competitive economy, Bulgaria and Romania need to be members of Schengen. And something else that is very important, I would like Bulgaria to be ambitious with its ideas, plans and proposals that it submits to the EU institutions. We cannot have a European Union that wishes to have a strong policy if our decision-making is as it is now. Countries gather, reach decisions with procrastination and haggling, especially countries that are like us. We need to change the system from consensus to qualified majority. I know what some people will say. Ilhan Kychuk wishes to sneak the Western Balkans in somehow. Therefore, let us be ambitious and responsible before the future of the European Union, because it's the future of all of us.
Colleague Mr. Butikofer, the floor is yours.
President, Prime Minister, Commission, colleagues, I want to thank you, Prime Minister Denkov, for talking to us and with us. You dwelt quite extensively on historic issues, and you spoke about the European spirit of Bulgaria that your national hero emphasized, and I'm sure all of us loved it. You quoted JFK, and I like that too. So let me ask you this question. What will Bulgaria do for the EU with regard to EU enlargement? You didn't mention the name of your neighboring country, North Macedonia, whose access so far has been blocked by Bulgaria. In vague terms only, you seemed to question the real will of candidate countries. Can anybody question the real European will of North Macedonia, a country that even went as far as changing its name in order to open the door to Europe? After Mr. Dzhambazki spewed hate against North Macedonia here, I would like to ask you, Prime Minister, to be more specific. What will you do to help opening the door for North Macedonia? I believe Bulgaria must avoid hampering the accession process with overhyped national blockades. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, Mr. Slabakov.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Academic Denkov, Mrs. Gabriel, Commissioner. I was planning to speak on education and culture, but the way things are going, I will be speaking about Schengen. I am a Deputy Chair of the Culture Committee, and I'd like to address all of those who think that Bulgaria should not accede to the Schengen. All of the illegal smuggling channels have been funded by the Central European countries. Austria, Germany, these are not Bulgarian trafficking channels. And something else that I'd like to say to my colleague from the Greens. When they beat up Bulgarians, they don't let them self-identify as Bulgarians. Don't say that Dzhambazki speech was a hate speech. You just don't understand what's happening in Macedonia. And now, in Bulgaria, the budget for culture is 0.4. This education budget is 0.1 out of the national budget. This is very little. A while ago in our committee, we voted that the minimum culture budget should be 2%. The way things are going, we will reach that percent in about 150 years. I hope you have a plan with regard to culture and education, because these things are very important. They should be a priority of ours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, Mr. Wilimski. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, in the German-speaking world, we tend to say, by the time we reach the evening, lazy people get going. And that reminds me of the types of decisions we've taken recently. You know, the decisions to be taken today, previous days, also what we intend to decide going forward. I don't know. Politically speaking, it seems insane to me. And I wanted to say a few words also about the history of this This Is Europe debate, the background to it. It started with this Parliament, and it started, I suppose, with the lockdown policy, you know, the consequences for the continent, the lockdown policy. Look at what happened. Unemployment, businesses going bust. And I think psychologically it was a real burden for a lot of people. 1.8 billion vaccines being purchased. And I know that the public prosecutor's offices are looking at those purchases. Anyway, this is really a failure of the European Union. In a way, it started with that, and then it continues, of course, with Ukraine versus Russia. Waves and waves of hundreds and thousands of sanctions. And it seems to me we've basically only shot ourselves in the foot by taking such decisions. Again, unemployment, businesses going bust, and so on and so forth. We are going down the wrong route. It's a complete failure, and these measures are a complete failure. So let's take stock. Are we going to continue like this, with this kind of insane way of proceeding? You know, the Green Deal sounds nice. It sounds nice on paper, but our competitiveness will be lost as a European Union. E-mobility, the question of nuclear energy, you know, all of that. Politically speaking, what you're proposing is insane. Also, we're talking about, you know, possibly using insect protein in our meals, etc., etc. This is absolutely incredible for me. So when you ask the question, this is Europe, is this Europe? Well, my reply would be, this is a Europe that is going completely down the wrong track. Anyway, we've got June coming up next year. I hope that there will be a change, a reasonable one at that point.
Mrs. Daly, thank you very much.
Thanks, President, and thanks, Prime Minister, for being here and for the meetings you had with us and your Cabinet and your President on the recent rule of law monitoring visit to Bulgaria. Bulgaria, of course, is the oldest independent country in Europe, a magnificent place and people, but for all the hope that EU membership would help transform it, the truth is that it remains the poorest country in the EU, experiencing an 11% drop in population as young people left to find opportunities elsewhere. While scandal after scandal dogged previous administrations, Barcelona Gate, the Eight Dwarfs, the Golden Bars, massive corruption facilitated by the absolute power of the Prosecutor General and the close collaboration with former Prime Minister Boyko Borisov. Now, your party came out of the movement of the people to change all that. And that movement has made changes, but many issues remain. And I think it's really important that it's put on record here that all of those cases of those in power accused of robbing the Bulgarian people will be investigated, those responsible held to account, and that there will be no impunity. Lastly, I agree with you totally. Bulgaria should be in Schengen, but I do have a concern that the European Commission is demanding a price for that you act as Europe's brutal military border guards in violation of human rights. There have been multiple accounts of pushbacks. We have a black book on pushbacks here, which I'm going to give you as a present, which I hope you read to investigate the evidence in that and ensure the upholding of human rights. Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, colleague Mr. Novakov. The floor is yours.
Madam Chair, Mr. Prime Minister, Madam Commissioner, dear friends, I'll make an effort to start off with something positive. I'd like to thank Mr. Denkov for all of his efforts, for his pro-European, pro-Atlantic position on behalf of Bulgaria. This was obligatory and very important. Unfortunately, this is all I can say in positive terms. We need to go back to the predictability from years ago, and this was something that we saw when we had Boyko Borisov here. Unfortunately, Bulgaria was together with a group of countries, part of a group of countries where stability was characteristic, but this is no longer the case. We now live amidst demands for resignations, political scandals, etc. Investors would come and stay in Bulgaria. This is no longer the case. This may come as a surprise to you, but apart from asking who in Bulgaria, we also need to ask the question how much of the European funds have been paid out. Let me answer that for you, 2%. How much of the funds under the Recovery and Resilience Plan has been paid out? 3%. How many countries are in our position? 0, not 1. We can continue questioning what will be the difference between the money negotiated and the money that will eventually reach our municipalities. This will be a big difference. I think we need to address this issue of making sure that money gets to Bulgarian municipalities. This needs to stop. We need to stop transferring funds from the previous programming period. We need to stop repurposing funds. This is why, based on Article 129, I asked the European Commission to make sure that Bulgaria will not lose any funds from the recovery and resilience plans by implementing a schedule. We need a plan for investments. We should not assess here declarations, but rather results. Thank you.
Eva, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam President. Mr. Prime Minister, the government that you're heading excuses its presence with several goals, Schengen membership and the Eurozone, and the need of stability in the complex geopolitical situation. On a domestic plan, we need to see whether the idea of the changes in the judiciary will become true. The aims seem to be to injure the image of the Bulgarian Prime Minister. 5 months later, can you say whether your goals will be achieved? On Schengen, you use the path of trying to persuade Austria and the Netherlands, the two countries that block our path to Schengen. Are you prepared to exercise pressure on these two states with the mechanisms of the Union? Would you accept as a compromise just the lifting of the control on the air borders? Another ship is suffering in the Black Sea. Mr. Denkov, don't you think that Bulgaria should play a much stronger role in the dialogue with Putin? Do you think that we should leave this to the other European countries?
Domnule prim-ministru, suntem împreună.
Prime Minister, Romania and Bulgaria are captives to Austrian Chancellor Nehammer on the Schengen matter, and I know that you are making diplomatic efforts to unblock the veto of Austria and the Netherlands reservations. I have a question for you. As head of the Romanian government, at the time, I cooperated with the Bulgarian government in order to lift visas for Canada, and it was a good effort. I'd like to ask you if you have this kind of cooperation with your Romanian partners right now. Secondly, in these negotiations, are you prepared to accept certain elements that could positively get the discussions going, that could potentially get the discussions going in order to have a clear decision of the Council in December in order for our two countries to enter the Schengen area next year, even if this is done at different dates for the two countries? Of course, you're not going to tell us exactly what you're negotiating on, but it's important for us to have information to know if there can be a final decision this year in the Council. Thank you.
Your Excellencies, Prime Minister, I have bad news for Chancellor Nehammer. Austria is no longer an empire. Gone are the days where the Empress Maria Theresa put taxes on the Romanian shepherds to make them leave Transylvania and go to Wallachia. Hungary has billions of euros suspended because it doesn't observe the rule of law. Poland the same. Not Austria, that is blocking the access of Romania and Bulgaria to Schengen and violates the treaty with no plausible reason. It's a mystery why the European Commission did not trigger an infringement procedure against Austria that violated 5 articles of the Fundamental Rights Charter of the EU. By blocking Romania and Bulgaria, damage of hundreds of billions of euros, not only for these countries, but for the whole European economy. Since von der Leyen is promoting the Green Deal and wants zero emissions, I would like to tell her something. Every year, trucks waiting even 24 hours at the border generate 46,000 tons of carbon dioxide. Nevertheless, Austria has gone scot-free when the European Commission, the guardian of the treaty, should ask it to pay damage. In the JHA Council 2 weeks later, Europe has a historical chance to eliminate the abuse against the Romanians and Bulgarians. In case of a negative vote of Austria, I respectfully ask the members of the Schengen area to show their respect and support for Romania and Bulgaria, and on their own initiative to stop discriminating Romanians and Bulgarians, letting them having access to the European countries by the Schengen lanes. Of course, the Romanians and Bulgarians could control all the trucks, cars from Austria and trains, not to have illegal migrants coming through Austria.
Next, Beatrice Covassi, 1 minute, please. I ask the colleagues to stick to their time.
Benvenuto, Primo Ministro. Thank you, President. Welcome, Prime Minister Denkov. Ladies and gentlemen, what is Europe today? A common project that must become more and more of a horizon of hope for its citizens every day. This means making progress on enlarging Schengen, as you rightly stated today, guaranteeing freedom of movement and opportunities for all, just as we need to make progress with extending the Eurozone to strengthen the economy and the internal market. But one thing must remain clear to everyone. The European Union is not just a large trading and economic bloc. Europe is a community of purpose which rests on the common values enshrined in the treaties and makes cohesion, solidarity and peace its most powerful weapons. We must reflect this awareness in our work over the months running up to the European elections. It is necessary for Europe to speak with one voice in foreign policy. I'm thinking of Ukraine and the commitment to a peaceful solution in the Middle East, where a first truce is finally coming. And then strengthening democracy, sustainable growth and inclusion, with reform of the treaties, the Stability and Growth Pact, the right of asylum, and consolidating the health union. Dear colleagues, we have a date with history. It is time today to regain courage in politics. Thank you.
Next is Iskra Mihailova for 1 minute, please. Can I please ask the colleagues to be quiet? The debate is ongoing. Thanks.
Madam President, Madam Commissioner, distinguished Mr. Prime Minister, dear colleagues. Mr. Prime Minister, you raised the issue about how we could contribute to the European Union. My answer is through ambitious and constructive participation of Bulgaria in the implementation of the EU policies. And here I will draw your attention to the energy security and independence policies, which are part of the EU Pact. What is your opinion about the potential of the energy efficiency measures and the renewal of the construction fund, decarbonization? From the point of view of Bulgaria, that is strongly dependent on Russian supplies of energy and has delayed its plan for a just transition. At the same time, we have inherited buildings constructed according to the obsolete socialist standards. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. Mr. Prime Minister, welcome to the European Parliament. Bulgaria is right next to the front where Russia is waging a war against Ukraine. Previous Bulgarian governments have refused to provide military aid to Ukraine and thus have given the European Union an impression that the Bulgarian position on the Russian aggression is not very clear. Now there's a new majority in the Bulgarian parliament and this has been largely overcome. But exactly because of these suspicions towards Bulgaria, it is now important to clear up whether Bulgaria is keeping with the conditions of the import of Russian oil, for Lukoil, that Bulgarian government has negotiated with the European Commission. In this regard, Bulgaria has an obligation to notify the European Commission about the implementation of the embargo against Russia effective 2014. And secondly, on the derogation decision, to notify Member States and the European Commission about the export on behalf of Lukoil related to the exceptions under environmental risk. So I ask you for a clear answer. Has the Bulgarian government done that? Have you notified the Member States and the European Commission? Thank you.
It's my then next, Svetlana Penkova, 1 minute.
Madam President, Mr. Prime Minister, Madam Commissioner, Bulgaria and Romania are part of the European Union for 17 years. Those who were born in the year of our accession are almost of age, and yet we're not members of the important unions, Schengen and the Eurozone. It is not admissible for a whole generation to be treated as second-rate Europeans. The European Commission has repeatedly declared its support for Bulgaria's membership in these two organizations. Two questions to you, Mr. Prime Minister. How is our partnership with Romania developing, and what are the options for joint reactions, and what were the diplomatic steps of your government to convince the states blocking us that the Bulgarian nationals cannot be subjected to that discrimination? We are late. We started simultaneously with Croatia, but on account of the political instability in our country, we are lagging behind. Mr. Schieder.
I'm a convinced European Social Democrat and from Austria, and I have to say, I think European solutions and cooperation is better than veto. So therefore I have to say clearly, I do not understand the Austrian veto against the Schengen membership of Bulgaria and Romania. I think it's a big mistake, European-wise, but also Austrian-wise. Secondly, Prime Minister, being a European, I have also to say I work very much on the enlargement and I'm very much involved in the Western Balkans. And therefore I think also that North Macedonia needs the support of Bulgaria in order to enter the European Union. They made huge reforms and they would be your best friends. So please also help North Macedonia to be quite soon member of the European Union.
Thank you, Mr. Schieder. Next, Matjaž Nemec, 1 minute.
Spoštovani predsednik vlade, spoštovani visoki zbor, dobrodošli v Evropskem parlamentu.
Colleagues, Prime Minister Mr. Denkov, welcome to the European Parliament. The series of crises that we've seen in recent years have had a profound impact on Europe, as well as the rest of the world. And it's been shown, once again, that credibility is very important for the Union, solidarity, cooperation in the European Union. I think the Union is resilient as long as we are united. Now, it is for that reason unacceptable that to this very day, Bulgaria and Romania are still standing at the gates of Schengen, even though they've fulfilled the conditions many, many years ago. I think it's unacceptable for this kind of political gamesmanship to hold back this European idea of millions of Europeans. I think we need to put an end to this, and we can do that through the enlargement policy which should be based on objective criteria. EU enlargement, in my opinion, is the best strategic guarantee for peace. And therefore, Prime Minister, I continue to expect from Bulgaria a pro-European stance, the kind that you advocate, and we are in favour of your joining.
Before the Prime Minister again.
Mr. Prime Minister, lately in Bulgarian political debate, the notion Europe has been replaced with Euro-Atlantism. And for it, Bulgaria has given up the right to import gas. Well, this continues to happen in Europe. We have given up on the Skopje's ambition, and Bulgarians continue to be persecuted in Skopje. In the name of Euro-Atlantism, we are on the way of giving up the import of Russian oil. At competitions, military Bulgarian companies have been neglected. In the name of Euro-Atlantism, we've given up the combat against corruption, and the current coalition was set up. In the meantime, the doors to Schengen remain closed to Bulgaria. The Recovery and Resilience Plan is stuck in a dead-end street, and less Bulgarians vote. Mr. Prime Minister, I think it's urgent to clear up what the priorities of your government are. And I hope with the European elections next year, Bulgarians will find a reason to go and vote.
Mr. Denkov, in order to answer to the questions posed to him. Prime Minister, you have the floor. Can I please ask the colleagues to keep a little bit quiet?
Уважаема госпожо президент, уважаеми председатели на комисии, уважаеми
Madam President, Madam Commissioner, members of the European Parliament, I shall try within 5 minutes to address the key issues by starting that the formation of the coalition that is currently ruling Bulgaria was the only possible pro-European option for forming a government that would create stability in the state. And I would like to thank especially Mrs. Maria Gabriel, who is here with me, with whom we go to meetings together in order to convince all who are still doubting that we can and that we are ready to work together for the European development of Bulgaria. From this point of view, it is really disappointing for me that part of the Bulgarian MEPs did not support the efforts of the debate, but tried to bring in some kind of division that is absolutely unnecessary. Bulgaria is a European state, and we shall work for the European development of Bulgaria. Thank you for the comments. Thank you that together with the conservative and liberal values, we should add the social democratic values, the green values, wherever we can find a common solution for the development of Europe along the roads that would bring affluence and prosperity of the Bulgarian citizens. Nobody has the right to claim to be the only one that can find a solution. We must make efforts to work together so that over the next years we can guarantee the devolution of Europe. Mr. Jambaski asked me, what can the European Union do for Bulgaria, and why did I step back from that idea? Very often the interests are not opposed. Interests are mutual. What we can do together is the best that can help Bulgaria. This is important. This is why it is important Bulgaria to be integrated in all EU structures, the Schengen area, the Eurozone, and there is no contradiction in this. On the questions connected with Lukoil, the Russian oil, I would like to state very resolutely from this rostrum, never has Bulgaria violated EU regulations, never has it broken the laws. Lukoil has not violated the laws with respect to the processing of oil and oil products. Therefore, any speculations and rumors along this line need to be disproved, and they will be disproved with facts. I have checked. There are no such violations. With respect to investors, I can assure all of you that the progress attained by Bulgaria over the past months connected with the rule of law are already producing results. The monitoring on the judiciary system of Bulgaria was lifted. Bulgaria ranked first in the sphere of the progress in the judiciary. The increase of direct foreign investments by more than 50% is really telling. 50% more foreign investments in Bulgaria. This shows that the efforts of the Bulgarian government are understood. And finally, is there cooperation with Romania? Yes, of course. Every one, prime ministers, presidents may use different forms of expression, but Romania and we are convinced that we must develop the cooperation in the Balkan Peninsula. We initiated trilateral meetings concerning the development of the infrastructure from Greece across Bulgaria and Romania to Ukraine. And this is all part of the European effort to develop the region of the Balkans. And I shall end on the North Macedonia I remember our relations with North Macedonia in the 90s. We were the first country in the world that recognized North Macedonia as an independent European state. Unfortunately, our relations deteriorated over the years, and I don't think that Bulgaria is to blame. I want to state clearly, at present, Bulgaria has no claims to and demands to North Macedonia, except those that were enshrined in the treaty. There are relations between North Macedonia and the European Union. The North Macedonia should comply with those, and this is why I don't accept any criticism on this.
Very much, Prime Minister Denkov. Thank you for this very good debate. We will move straight to the vote, dear colleagues. Thank you. Mr. Dzhambazki, do you want a point of order to do with the votes?
It is a point of order, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
I would like to ask you